Welcome to Sew with Monty. We are finishing our T-shirt serger project, and I wanted to show you what I've decided to do with the neckline. Originally, I had made a collar that was marrow edged. I'll show you a piece of it here, that I thought would be really cute to have underneath my binding. But when I tested this collar under here, I found it was very difficult to go across here, and sometimes you have to pay attention to that because you don't want to damage your machine. Take it from one who's learned from experience. If you cram too much fabric under your serger, you could mess up your timing. 3 things you've got to watch out for: sewing over pins, breaking needles, and sewing on too thick of layers and forcing your serger through that. So with that in mind, and after seeing what it could do to my machine, I've decided to leave the collar part off and just do the band. So what I've done is, my band is smaller than my neckline, and I've marked my neckline center front with a little yellow mark right here, and I've put my 2 openings adjacent to that mark. And then I've marked my band on the sides where the shoulder seams are, and in the center back with little yellow marks, such as this. And I've lined it up with the shoulder seam, and then the back, I've lined up a yellow mark here with a yellow mark in the center back of my neckline. So I've got those 4 in first, and then I simply took the pins in between these sections. See, the neckline itself is larger than the band, so I just simply stretch the band slightly and find the center and pin it, much like you would do if you were putting a rib neckline on a t-shirt. This is the same way. So I just stretch it gently and put my pins in between these sections so that when I sew it on, it will have a slight little amount of tension there between those spots. So I've got the whole thing pinned on now, all around. My collar, my neckband is pinned to my neckline, with the pins going in on the outside edge so I can easily get to them and take them out before I serge across them. I don't want to go across a pin with my serger. That will also damage my machine. So let's go over to the machine. I'll show you how to sew this on, and we'll start working on the skirt as well. So now I'm ready to sew the neckband onto my bodice. And I've got it all pinned, again, with a little bit of ease in there so that I pull a little bit slightly on the band and ease in the neckline. I've got my machine set for a regular 2 needle 4 thread stitch. I've got my width on 7. I want it a little wider so that I catch the overlock that I've already put on the band to hold it securely. So I've got my width on 7, my length on 3, and then my tensions are 4, 4, 4.5, 4.5 for my upper and lower looper. Just needs to be a slightly bit tighter on those tensions for the loopers, but everything else looks really good. Always remember to test your threads test your stitches before on a scrap before you start sewing on your actual garment. Now I'm going to start about halfway in the front neckline. I don't want to start here because I don't want my overlap of my seam to be right in front and show. And as I go, I'm just going to gently pull the pins out and put that little bit of stretch on there, that slight stretch on my neckline. And as I go around, when I come to this little section, I want to go slow and make sure that I catch both sides as tight together as possible. Always check underneath too to make sure you're not sewing something there that you don't want to sew. So as you come here, you want to go slow, and I want to take both pins out so that I can hold it with my fingers and not risk running over a pin. And then I just go gently here. If I see anything folding back or acting weird, I'll raise my pressure foot, fix it, adjust it, and go on. Looks like it's going to go through there just fine. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and finish sewing this and show you what it looks like, and we'll go on to the skirt. So now I have my neckline sewn on, and I really like the way it looks. It's came out so pretty and so clean. Looks very professional. I've got a slight gap here. That little gap, along with the openings in each side of my casing, is where I'm going to thread my drawstring. And that's going to bring my neckline in slightly because right now it's a little bit wide. But that allows for some ruching when we put the drawstring in. So we'll do that at the end and show you how that looks. The next part is we're going to work on the skirt. Now my skirt is the bottom half of the second t-shirt. And I've cut two sections. I cut the bottom half off the first t-shirt and the bottom half off the second t-shirt. The reason I wanted two of these is because I want to go 2-to-1 gathering ratio onto my top. So I need twice as much as I have here. So the next thing I'm going to do, I've opened up one edge of this, or did I? Nope, haven't opened it yet. So we're just going to go on these edges because it's tubular, so they're folded goods. Oh yes, I did open it. So right here, I've opened one edge of this tube. And then I've opened this edge here as well, so that I can take these two edges and put right sides together and sew them up into one larger tube so that I can gather it onto my skirt. So the first thing I'll do is use the regular stitch that I have on now with my 2 needles and my 4 threads, and I'm going to sew both sides of these 2 long pieces together. And then I'm going to take the gathering foot and put it to my top and go ahead and sew it on with my gathering foot. So let's go back to the machine and I'll show you how to do this. So now I have my skirt and my top on my machine with my gathering foot, or my ruffling foot, however you want to call it. And what I've done, there is a plate on the bottom half of this, which you saw in part 1 of this video series. This plate is going to cause the underpiece to ruffle or gather and keep the top piece, which goes on top of the plate but underneath the foot, flat. So the bodice will stay flat and the skirt will ruffle. Now my settings, I've put my differential feet on 2 and I've put my stitch length on 4. I want it to be as long as possible. Now you can use a 3 needle or 3 thread or a 4 thread to do this operation. I've chosen to do a 4 thread because I want it to be a stable seam as well. So I've left it on my 4 thread settings, and I'm using my widest stitch width, which is 7. So we're just going to go about this very gently, and you want to make sure you keep everything in front of you and ready to go so that you don't end up with a knot or a tuck sewn into this. Don't pull on either layer, just let the machine do the sewing and pulling on it. So you just want to get started. Now I've lined up my 2 side seams and I put them prior to the needle, the side seam of my underarm of my bodice to the side seam of my top. That way they should come out roughly right where I want it to be when I get to the other side. So you just want to go around here very slowly, sewing the 2 together. Don't stretch the top and don't stretch the bottom. Nice light hand on both. Just be the guide. Let the machine do the intake of the fabric. And you go all the way around, and then you'll have your skirt joined to your top. So let me go ahead and finish this and I'll show you what it looks like. So now we have the skirt gathered onto the bodice and it looks really good. Some suggestions I might like to make when you're doing this: don't sew the whole tube up, leave one end open. That way if you have to adjust your gathering a little bit, you won't already be committed to a seam. You can adjust your seam accordingly. You just gather as close as you can get and then make your new seam and then put it back together. The one good thing about the foot, let me show it to you here real quick, is that it has the capability of picking up the stitch right where it left off. Because this is open-ended here, open-ended at this end, you can put your fabric right back in there. The gathering is here, and you can push it right up against the needle and start right where you left off. So you don't really have a gap. And that really is nice because you don't have to worry about having a misstep in your gathering. So I really encourage everybody to try this, and do leave it open-ended so that you don't end up with not enough skirt or too much skirt or vice versa. And then just when you get ready to put it back in, don't panic. You can get it right up against the needle because this is open-ended. It's very easy to slip it right back in and carry on from where you left off. So now we're going to go on, and I've got it set up to do the blind hem on the bottom of the skirt. And I'm using my multi-purpose foot, and I've already tested it because I needed to adjust this little white plastic barrier and open it up a little bit. So I had to open it up so that the needle would actually catch the fabric that's folded. Now let's talk about the settings on this. We went over this in part 1 of this series, but you want to remove the inside needle, leave the outside needle. Then you want to take the tension on that outside needle and turn it to 1. You want it very loose so that it'll open back up when you get ready to open your blind stitch up. Your upper looper should be tighter, around 6, and your lower looper should be loose to about 3, somewhere in there. Test it and see. You may need to adjust yours accordingly, but that should be very close to what you need. I've also set my stitch width on 5, which is regular, and I've made my length on 4 because I want the stitches as open as possible. Now, before I ever got started sewing on this, I've already folded or pressed a hem, an 1.5 hem in the bottom edge of my top, like this, so that I'm ready to go. All I have to do now is fold it again so that I can catch the blind hem. So I want to get close to my seam. So let's see here. This is my seam. And I'm going to fold it up like this, where I've pressed it, and then I'm going to turn it back approximately 3/8 of an inch. Now I like to use an 1.5 hem. That gives me a little extra to cut off. So, and you can see it's uneven. I don't mind. I'm going to cut it off anyway. And I'm going to slip this up under here, and I'm going to line my fold up with the little guide on my multi-purpose foot. And simply fold on your crease, your pre-pressed crease. And I like to be about 5 or 6 inches ahead of the game. So I want to fold that one first, and then fold back my soft fold about 3/8 inch away from that crease. So you want to kind of be ahead of it. So get it set up, and then as you go along, stop and refold so that you do a really nice job here. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. We're going to go over this seam, so we want to be very slow, very careful so we don't bind our machine. And then as I go, I'm just going to keep folding that first crease and then folding my soft second crease, trying not to get a twist in it. That's very important that you don't get it twisted. I'm sure a lot of you have had t-shirts that have twisted hems. That's exactly why. So don't let a twist form. Stop and straighten it out. And sometimes you have to lift your foot and go ahead and do that too. But as you see, just keep the soft fold against this little white guide, and your stitch will be beautiful. So let me go ahead and do this one, and then I'll show you what it looks like. So the top is complete, and I'm in love with it. I love the way the blind hem looks on the bottom and the way the gathering come out. I know now that I'll leave that other seam open and just let it go into itself, and then sew the seam after I've got the gathering in, and then sew the hole up. But I'm loving the way it looks. It's wide and open and just the way I wanted it to be. And you can see the back. It's very full and loose and fun, and I think it'll be a great top to wear this summer with jeans and shorts. I'm also going to try it again and use older t-shirts and upcycle and see how they come out with the prints and colors. Please try it at home. Try your own way. Be creative. Get some t-shirts and have some fun with your serger. It's a great way to learn how to use it, and you might get a bonus garment that you really love and want to wear.